Hello students, I'm glad you're watching. This is an overview of the case MindTree Limited, hostile acquisition. The case captures the dilemma of founders of an enterprise when they are faced with a hostile acquisition bid, whether to acquiesce, cede control and maximize their wealth, or to resist and run the risk of losing both. Set in 2019, the case provides a rich description of the takeover battle between the founders of the software services firm MindTree and the leadership of the bidder, L&T, a widely diversified conglomerate. The case invites you to review the choices of the MindTree founders as they vehemently opposed the bid, even as the leaders of L&T sought to present their takeover proposal as a gentlemanly overture. The case is also significant because hostile acquisitions are rare in India and thus provides a singular opportunity to discuss the role of the board in such situations, particularly their role as mentors guiding strategic choices of firm leaderships. The case opens with the questions posed in public by the founders of MindTree to the L&T leadership when the takeover of the firm seemed imminent. The next section captures MindTree's journey, the challenges and successes from inception in 1999 to 2018. The following section outlines the early signals of the coming disruption following the announcement of the largest shareholder to sell his holding in the company and the efforts of the founders to avoid dilution of their control. The penultimate section deals with the actual sequence of takeover events and the attempts made to thwart the takeover. The last section deals with the aftermath of the takeover by L&T, the ushering of a new management and the exit of the founders. The case is apt for learning about corporate governance, to discuss the role of the board, entrepreneurship, to discuss the founder's dilemma, strategic leadership, to discuss the strategic choices made by the firm leadership, or mergers and acquisitions, to discuss hostile takeovers. Each of these management topics are critical in the rapidly changing IT-generating economic sector. As such, this case may help you better understand your chosen company for the analytics case, and IT-generating firms in general, since they commonly deal with mergers and acquisitions. This case helps focus on the board's role in guiding strategic choices, especially during challenging times such as a hostile acquisition. I present topics that should help you organize thinking into three broad spaces: the founder's stance, the role of MindTree's board of directors, and L&T leadership's management of the acquisition process. The first space is about the founder's stance. Think about questions raised from the founders. First, are hostile acquisitions bad? When does an acquisition become hostile? The question is intended to bring out a nuanced discussion of the notion of hostility. Hostile to whom? Those in control, in this instance the founders, or the company and its current shareholders. The textbook definition of a hostile acquisition is one where an acquirer seeks to acquire a company or target without the nod of the target company's management. More precisely, the target company's leadership opposes or resists the efforts to gain control of the corporation by the acquirer. This creates an interesting dichotomy. What if the acquisition is good for the company but not for those in control, or vice versa? Setting up the following question: is the L&T bid good for MindTree? What about its shareholders? Given the tiered structure of the industry, see Exhibit 9 in the case, it would be hard for MindTree or L&T to break into the top league without making acquisitions. Indeed, MindTree itself has made several acquisitions, albeit small, to get to where it is today. See Exhibit 1 in the case. Moreover, the company's current strategy centered on digital technologies is unlikely to catapult it into the top league, nor is L&T likely to get to the top league without acquisitions. This is admitted by the L&T CEO in case page 5 when he says that the post-acquisition turnover of $3 billion will give respectability in terms of scale point and a front seat at NASSCOM, the industry association. Furthermore, the founders themselves had approached L&T a few years back to invest in the MindTree, suggesting that consolidation among the Tier 2 players was necessary for achieving meaningful scale in the industry. This was around 2014 when the company fell well short of its revenue ambition. See case page 5. Viewed from this lens, the option was either to acquire or be acquired. Given the compelling need for the largest shareholder to divest, the company being in play was inevitable. The only alternative was for the founders to buy the stake. That they did not do so suggests that they did not have the resources, or bring in a white knight, which was hard to do without the founders' willingness to share, if not cede, control. In sum, the acquisition was good for the company, not for those in control, and in this case, that's the founders. Another question is, do you think L&T will be remembered as a company that cannot build a great technology business without decimating another organization? The founders' efforts to present L&T as a saw-wielding, employee-hostile bulldozer draws attention to the various achievements of L&T and its leadership. A 5-time member of Forbes Asia's annual Fabulous 50 list, its chairman A.M. Naik being named 32nd best performing CEO in the world by Harvard Business Review, the company being ranked number 9 among the most innovative companies in the world, its brand being rated as the 38th most trusted brand in the country, and the first company in the non-IT space to award stock options to its employees. See case appendix. These achievements may lead you to conclude that L&T is a sterling company. The fact that L&T has built twice as large an IT business as MindTree, with the first of its IT arms, L&T Infotech, starting just before MindTree came into being, and the second arm, L&T Technology Services, almost a decade later, and which are performing better than MindTree, see Exhibit 7 for data, dent the accusations of MindTree founders against L&T, and in the process the founders' credibility as well. Will MindTree's customers take their business elsewhere, since, as the founders claim, they chose the company for its unique culture? While you may expect some customers to walk away, they do not expect a mass exodus, since they do not buy the claim that the customers buy the company's culture. Instead, customers principally buy services and products because they are a compelling value proposition and do not see the company's culture as being exceptional. Also consider data on clients given in Exhibit 7 to argue that L&T compares very favorably in terms of client profiles and acquisition. Others would point out that the company's biggest customer, Microsoft, has also been L&T's customer for long, and the two seem to have a strong relationship. See L&T's CEO's comment in case page 7. What about the employees of MindTree? Will they leave the company if their mission is taken away? Some will point out that culture matters, since software services is people intensive, and demonstrated by MindTree's attrition rates being comparable to that of L&T, despite the remuneration being less. See Exhibit 7. Others would use the same data to suggest that employees would look forward to the acquisition, expecting an upward revision to their salaries. Overall, while there could be some challenges in terms of employee retention, especially at leadership levels, an exodus is unlikely, and L&T is inherently a very good company for which to work. Does L&T's conduct send a wrong message to startups in the country? Is it displaying extreme hostility to first-generation entrepreneurs? Is MindTree even a startup? After being in existence for over 20 years, 10 plus years since its IPO, it is seen as a well-established enterprise rather than as a startup. Nor is L&T's conduct as hostile to the founders. It offered a high purchase price if the founders came on board. See case page 5. It also wanted them to continue in their current roles. See case page 8. And handled the interaction maturely without getting emotional. See case page 7. L&T clearly was not behaving like the barbarian at the gate that the MindTree founders were seeking to portray. Instead, the L&T leadership team seemed to be making desperate efforts to appear as gentlemanly as possible to court MindTree. The need to insulate tech entrepreneurs from takeover threats by issuing differential voting rights, DVRs for instance, see case page 6, does appeal. However, the question as to whether these rights should persist even after the company goes public is also important. Should there be some time limit? In the absence of any restrictions on the additional rights these voting rights confer, how does one discipline underperforming founders? Such measures weaken the role of the market for corporate control. Whether these rights and other known hostile takeover defenses, such as poison pills and golden parachutes, should be extended to non-tech companies, often meets with vociferous opposition. This is because, unlike in the United States, where those in control of the company have little or no holding and the shareholding is widely dispersed, most companies in India are controlled by founders and their families, who have significant stakes and have often used it to further their interests at the cost of other shareholders. An idea that affords them additional protection does not appeal. The big challenge in India today is the absence of a market for corporate control that could help disciplining these companies for poor or underperformance. Why did the founders do what they did? They lost on both counts. The final acquisition price was much lower than the price which was first offered, and they lost control of the company they founded. The founders were confronted, perhaps for the first time, the classic founder's dilemma: maximize wealth creation or continue leading the company they started. Up until this moment, the MindTree founders did not have to confront this dilemma because Siddhartha, the largest shareholder, would unequivocally back them, even when they failed to deliver. See case page 4. Faced with the dilemma, they opted for control over maximizing wealth. A careful analysis, the extent of their ownership, the compelling need for Siddhartha to sell, and the inability to easily sell such a large block of shares in the secondary markets without attracting a discount, would have revealed that maximizing wealth would have been the better option. Instead, they let their emotions overrule reason. For example, the various tweets of co-founder Bagchi, and sought to cast L&T in the role of a villain. For example, the dramatic posting of 5 questions in the public space, and perhaps ended up drinking their own Kool-Aid. The second space is about the role of the board. Did the MindTree board act in the best interests of the corporation? What about its shareholders? The typical response is yes, that the MindTree board did act in the best interests of the corporation. Concerning shareholders, no. As discussed, the industry context was one of consolidation. The company had to either acquire or get acquired to achieve scale and secure the company's future. Consequently, consider the board to have acted in the best interests of the corporation as it endorsed L&T's proposal to make an open offer to gain majority stake and control. In fact, this was the board's committee of independent directors, since the rest of the members of the board were the founders. Consider that the board did not manage to get the best price for the shareholders once it was clear that control of the company would change hands, what is referred to as the Revlon rule. This raises an interesting question about when could the board, rather the independent directors of the board, have determined the control of the company was likely to change hands, or at least get altered. One could easily argue that since Siddhartha announced his plans almost a year before the actual transaction, and it was clear that the founders were not planning to buy his stake, a change in the control was inevitable, given the shareholding structure. Clearly, they seem to have failed to monitor the subsequent developments and importantly mentor the leadership team, the founders, especially when L&T offered to have paid Siddhartha a price in the range of 1,150 rupees, or about $16 per share, provided the founders endorsed the deal. They could have stepped in, played the role of the negotiator between L&T and the founders, and improved the offer price substantially, given the company's strong digital business portfolio and performance. See Exhibit 3. Superior performance compared to its peers. See Exhibit 6. The strong complementarity between the company's portfolio and that of L&T, which the L&T CEO alludes to. See case page 5. And the strategic intent of L&T, as stated by its CEO, to grow its IT service business as it was inherently more profitable and less risky. See case page 5. Also consider the need to generate better return than the 5% on the cash held by the company as stated by L&T's CFO. See case page 5. Clearly this was a big mess. Why did the MindTree board miss the opportunity to increase the offer price? Most likely it too was swayed by the founders' rhetoric. Additionally, the decision of the founders to take the battle public could have dissuaded them, lest they be seen as not supportive in the company's leadership. It could also be because of the rarity of hostile acquisitions in the country. Neither they nor their advisors, investment bankers as well as legal counselor, would have had much prior exposure to dealing with hostile acquisitions. Why didn't Nalanda, the largest institutional investor, join hands with Siddhartha to get a better deal for both? Nalanda's failure to do so is surprising, given the enormous stress Siddhartha was under that sadly led to his taking his own life. One can understand why he did not think of this option. Nalanda's stake, together with that of Siddhartha's, would have given L&T the minimum 26% stake it always wanted, and more importantly, a clear pathway to the majority stake of 51% it desired, as it would have enabled it to make an open offer without having to buy in the secondary markets. This approach would have enabled them to extract a control premium from L&T that they did not suggests that they too got swayed by the founders' rhetoric. Space 4 is about L&T's leadership. Did the L&T leadership manage the acquisition process well? Unambiguously, yes. The L&T leadership not only managed to achieve their strategic objective of deploying surplus capital to further L&T's growth and profit objectives, see case page 5, they did so without having to pay a control premium for the asset. Critically, they refused to be provoked by the MindTree founders' rhetoric, and instead by responding calmly and maturely. For example, L&T Chairman Nake's statesman-like comment in page 8 of your case. Quote, MindTree promoters are obviously attached to their company, so they don't easily want to give up. But now they realize that L&T is a very nice company, which is excellent to its employees too. Close quote. They used the opportunity to further enhance the company's reputation, yet they were clear and upfront and importantly firm in their responses. For example, the L&T CEO's statement that, quote, these entities would run at an arm's length. What will happen in the future? That I cannot predict. Close quote. See case page 11. And acted decisively at every stage, including taking charge of the board and appointing a new CEO. Another question is, what should L&T do to make a success out of MindTree acquisition? Consider 3 issues. First, ensure business continuity. This includes talent retention and new leadership hiring, as well as client outreach to reassure the clients that the change would not cause any disruptions in the company's services to them. The second is to drive growth. Higher growth would provide substance to the claim made by L&T that it would add value to MindTree. The third is timing the merger of the various IT arms of the L&T group. The views expressed range from do it now to don't do it ever. In closing, the challenge founders and firm leaderships face in hostile acquisition settings highlight the importance of being strategic and the need to maintain equanimity during such times, lest emotions trump reason, as they did in this case. The case also highlights the importance of a market for corporate control for disciplining those in control of companies who underperform, and the dangers of takeover defenses like golden parachutes and poison pills in emerging economies like India, where most companies are under control of the founders and their families. Also, the critical role of the board, since in mentoring the executive leadership and guiding their strategic choices during critical moments in a firm's journey. Finally, this case is very important in an age of information technology generating companies holding so much wealth in the world. There are several companies that generate IT having valuations over $500 billion, and several have valuations of over $1 trillion. For example, Alphabet, the owner of Google, Apple, and Amazon have reached the $1 trillion threshold. These and other extraordinarily large IT generating companies have massive amounts of cash and are constantly seeking other companies with compatible capabilities that they can buy. So mergers and acquisitions are a natural part of business in the IT generation space. Thanks for listening.